and all of a sudden at the very end or somewhere in there, there's a little bit of resentment that comes up, that person cannot refer you anymore. They won't.
Yeah. And it's not because you did something wrong necessarily, right? It's that there was an expectation that was unspoken. And I'm going to even add softly spoken expectations as well that were maybe not met. Welcome back, everyone, to Life at 10 Tenths, where we inspire you to live at the pinnacle of your ability and purpose. As always, I'm joined by my good friend Garrett Fry over in California, and I'm Matt here in South Carolina, and we are excited to have you here today. And this episode is going to be fun. It's kind of like a part 2 of our last episode because it ties in very well, but a little bit different angle, a little bit different twist here. And Garrett, you brought this topic to the table. So good morning to you, sir.
Good morning. And this topic or this idea, what I want as we kind of dive into it, Matt, like it might feel like this is just client relationship type stuff, but this is all relationship type stuff. This is everybody you have in your life. If you ever wonder where you get in trouble or go sideways, usually it comes back to this. But I do need to give a shout out to who gave me this. So I was on a coaching call the other day with Catherine Roberts. She's an agent with Sotheby's in Dallas-Fort Worth area, and amazing agent. If you need a great agent, Catherine is top of the top. She's incredible. But she threw out this line as we were on a coaching call, and she said, "Unspoken expectations are premeditated resentment." And as she said it, I was like, whoa, 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 no, don't just keep rolling here. Like, you got to go back and say that again. And I'll say it to you again. Unspoken expectations are premeditated resentment. And we were talking about, the working relationships that we have with people and the frustrations that can come up sometimes when all of a sudden we're wondering either why we're getting frustrated or resenting our clients, or we're watching it on our clients. And we watch this happen periodically where it's like, oh my gosh, they're ghosting me. I'm not getting responses from them anymore. Like, I don't know what's going on. Or they canceled the listing all of a sudden. What's happening here? And a lot of times it's expectations weren't set. But Matt, as we talk about this, I do want to talk about this also as like, I've watched this happen with parents who have expectations set wrong over who's taking care of who's making dinner tonight, who's putting the kids to bed. You have the wrong expectations set. You got resentment that's going to be coming down the road here. And this can happen in all, I use parents, but like, oh my gosh, fill in the blank.
Oh, this is like, it definitely, I see this. When you said this, I was like, oh yeah, this is in my world a lot too. And the key is that unspoken part too, because it's not even that sometimes the expectations are set incorrectly. We just think that they're set a certain way. And so then all of a sudden we get upset when something doesn't perform a certain way. And this happens in business a lot because agents will get frustrated with clients. And some of this just has to do with you guys are out there doing transactions every single day. So like real estate is just your life. You live and breathe it. Your clients do it once every so often. And so the perspective is different. So when something happens in a certain way, you get frustrated. You're like, oh, why are they like, how do they not know? It's like, because they don't. They just don't. And we think that they do. We think there's a level of knowledge potentially sometimes, and it's just not there. And that's okay. But don't make that assumption in your own brain because you're just going to be upset later on when something doesn't happen the right way. And that's that unspoken part of that expectation, Garrett, for me was like, yeah, we do that to ourselves a lot.
We think of it, you have a client that's calling you late at night, sending you late texts, sending you late emails, and we're going, oh, don't they know that this is this is my family time? This is when I'm supposed to be. It's like, did you tell them that? Like, did you let them know that? Or is this just this mystery thing that they should be like understanding and knowing?
Isn't that just the way people live, Garrett? And it's like the other side of that too is like, well why can we even set that expectation? Why are you creating that expectation of like how people inbound you? Like, I love waking up in the morning and after doing a bunch of things, I'll look at my phone and be like, oh, some people texted me at night. That's why we have a do not disturb function. So I don't have to worry about that unspoken expectation.
Well, so another instance of this. So I bought a house a while back, and as I was buying the house, there were some things about it that I had expectations of when I was going to get there, of how that house was going to be. And I'll never forget, like I got to it and I was like, oh, that's too bad. Like it was one of those, like for me, I started to build up a weird level of resentment and energy around it where I was like, I wish. At the end of the day, though, it's like, wait. These were my expectations. I never voiced them. I never said, this is what I expect. I never said, hey, what will this be like when I get there? And I walked into it going like, it's going to be at this level. And it was at this level. It was still great. Like everything about it was great. The situation was amazing. When you look back on it, you're like, oh my gosh, like this really worked out at an amazing level. But I had expectations in my head, which made it go sideways. And I had to stop and correct myself of going, I never told them what I was expecting. These things that could have been done, I could have asked for and said, are you going to take care of this or should I take care of it? And having that little bit of a conversation, that communication with them would have completely eliminated all that. Now, there are opportunities for me to speak up and make sure expectations are correct. There's also on the other side of it, which is the realtor side of it, to say, look, if I ask more questions and I engage more with these clients as we go through, I can make sure that all expectations are set up correctly, so that when we get to the end of this, we don't have resentment building up. And I think that it's on both parties. We both have the opportunity to do it, but you as a real estate agent, you running your business, it really falls into your hands. And you have to be the one to say, I need to make sure we have all expectations very clear here, especially if you want to build a referral-based business. One of the deaths of a referral-based business is you can have a great transaction, can be absolutely perfect, and all of a sudden at the very end or somewhere in there, there's a little bit of resentment that comes up. That person cannot refer you anymore. They won't.
Yeah. And it's not because you did something wrong necessarily, nope. Right? It's that there was an expectation that was unspoken. And I'm going to even add softly spoken expectations as well that were maybe not met, and it led to resentment. And so, because I will hear this too from agents, Garrett will say, but I did tell them. I'm like, when? Well, I told them up front. I'm like, when was that? It's like, well, that was like 6 months ago. I'm like, oh, okay. That's a long time ago. I mean, like, I have trouble remembering what I ate for breakfast. Actually, I know what I ate for breakfast because I usually take pictures of it, but like, whatever. Like people have trouble remembering what they ate for dinner. So how can they remember this softly spoken expectation that you set 6 months ago? Or how about for those buyer clients that come back around like 2-3 years later and you don't reset, you don't do the thing over again? It's like, well, they've already been through that, so we're good to go. It's like you think they know because you do this every day, but that softly spoken expectation that now doesn't even exist in their world is going to lead to resentment because they're going to not do something. They're not going to make a decision. You're going to get upset, or you're going to do something that they didn't think you were going to do, and they're going to get upset. Let's just clear the air constantly. Yeah. Let's just always keep that air really clear, and you're going to have better relationships, which is going to lead to better decision making too, Garrett.
So this goes back to I was thinking about the other night. I know I make dinner on our house 9 times out of 10. I'm the one that makes sure dinner is cooked and everybody's fed and we eat at a normal time, usually eat at a normal time. And, it's interesting is I had an evening where I had some stuff I had to go take care of. I had a project I was working on, and I just kind of lightly said to the household, like, hey, I'm going to go around and take care of some stuff. I'm going to be back later than normal. In my mind was like, oh, everybody understands that dinner's not going to be made. And in my mind, I thought I was going to come back in the house and dinner would be rolling and people would have things like kind of going in the right direction. And I walked into a house and the lights weren't even on. Like it was dark and I'm like, is anybody home? And they were all kind of in their own cubbies, doing their own things. And there was a level of like, damn it. Like I wanted to come home. I was trying to get this project done. I was just expecting in my mind, I was going to sit down, eat, have dinner, go to bed. And now all of a sudden I'm cooking dinner. It's going to be later than normal. I'm going to get to bed later than I wanted to be. And I was building up this energy inside me while I was cooking. And I had to stop and go, you never told them. Like you never said, you weren't going to come home and make dinner. You never said we're going to eat a little bit later. You never said, "Hey guys, I'm hoping you guys can get dinner going so that when I come back, we're not eating too late," or things like that. Like the conversation never happened. I had to do a big check of myself where I was like, "Calm down. You're going to eat a little bit later tonight," but you never set this expectation with the family. And on the other side of it is they expect I'm going to cook dinner. Like that is the expectation from them. Dad's got dinner taken care of. Like unless something is said, that's done. And I think we need to look at that with our relationships, with our kids, with our, and then these transactions that we're in, these relationships we build while we're working with people. Expectations are one of the things that we need to really map out and help people understand, when we're going to communicate with them. What is the expectation for returning phone calls? What is the expectation for answering the phone? What is the expectation while we're going through a real estate transaction? You have found a house, we're writing a contract. The expectation maybe of our communication can be different from what it was before this. And once this deal is done, our expectation of communication might be different after that. How many of you set an expectation of, after this deal is closed, here's how often you're going to hear from me. Here's how often you're going to get a real estate review. Here's how often you're going to be getting things in the mail that will help you be able to be the best homeowner you can be. We don't set any of these expectations. We just kind of roll through and people go like, "Well, I never even heard of my realtor after the sale." Well, they had an expectation they were going to hear from you and you might stay in touch. How dare they? We used to talk every single week and now they just bolted. They got their paycheck and they're gone. There's all these levels of expectations that if we have the chance of managing them and setting them, you can really set yourself up for success where nobody's walking away with resentment.
And with that, I think you should think about and consider what are the kind of preset unspoken expectations, because there's a lot when it comes to a realtor client relationship. And even at the end of the transaction, the expectation might be like, yeah, realtor's going to get their check. I'll probably never hear from them again. And then all of a sudden you surprise and delight, which is great. And maybe it's the other way around, which is not so great. But whichever way it is, if you come in and set an expectation, you get to reframe their approach right then and there versus waiting for a result to change it. Now, during the transaction and up front, when we're working with someone, we have to take a step back and pull ourselves out of our own kind of working world for a moment and say, like, what are the kind of probably the expectations that this person has? And you can even just ask, like, "Hey, what do you expect from this process? What do you expect?" And you can go look at your testimonials, look at all these things of what people say about you. Some of that stuff will be the expectation. Because like, if you have a testimonial out there that says, "Man, Garrett's the best. He answers whenever I call." Somebody reads that, their unspoken expectation. I was like, cool. Whenever I call Garrett, he answers the phone. The minute you don't answer the phone, they're like, "Gosh, he always answers his phone." It's like, you never told them that.
Why did they get better treatment than I got?
Right. And like, you never told them that you always answer the phone. You didn't tell them you're the 24/7 realtor, but out there in a testimonial was there. And then you never reset the expectation on communication. Because really what that testimonial is saying is Garrett always communicated with me on time. Right. Communication lines were clear. We always knew what was going on. And then when we didn't make it clear for somebody else, all of a sudden a missed phone call. This happened to my mom when I set her up with a great agent to help them sell their house when they moved down to South Carolina. And customer service calls didn't happen once they were under contract. And it was like a great deal. It was going well, but all of a sudden in her head, she was like, "What's going on? I'm not hearing from anybody." Yeah. And when she would hear from someone and it was like a small issue, like a paperwork thing, she was like, "Oh, things are going crazy. Like the deal's going sideways," because her expectation was something and it wasn't happening and it was relatively unspoken. And now all of a sudden she was getting really, really nervous. Right. Obviously, well, maybe not obviously, but that all got resolved and it was a happy ending, but still.
Well, I think a lot of finding the expectations, finding what somebody, you have to ask the question of, and I think the best way to go about this is, have you sold a home before? Yes. Tell me about that experience. How was that for you? What did you like the best? What would you like to have seen different? You have this opportunity for them to sit back and go, "Well, let me think about that. Like, this is the way it went. This is how it all kind of came together. And this is the things I like the best. And you know what? I felt like I never heard from my real estate agent. I never felt like I got good communication from him. We didn't quite know what was going on. Oh, that's really important to know. Is that something that's important to you? Here's how I handle that. Here's how I can take care of that. We can get these expectations put on the table, but you got to find out what their prior experience has been. And that's with buying, selling, getting into a new relationship with somebody. There's certain places there that you can be like, let's put it all on the table. Let's find out the things that are really important to you and what you expect out of a relationship, and what, where are the areas that I can show up the best and make sure that you're getting what you need out of this. A lot of times we never do this type of stuff. I definitely didn't do it going into my own personal relationship, sit down and ask those types of questions. I kind of went like, I'm bringing the best I got. Like, here we go.
It's so important to ask those questions, Garrett, because I will say, like, I've been in those situations. Like, I got the process. I got everything. We're going to lay it out. All the expectations are clear from my side, right?
Yeah.
Like, I put it all out there, but the client might have another expectation that they haven't voiced that wasn't included in this process, which is amazing and going to help them get to where they want to go on time, rock star status, all those things. But if we don't take the moment to just ask the question, then we may fail to deliver on something that they kind of expect, they think they expect. When if we bring it to the table, you can be like, cool, I can fit that in. Or it can be like, hey, that's not something that goes on here with this process. And it's like, oh, okay, cool. Now that expectation doesn't exist anymore.
Or I have a better way to make sure that you're going to understand what's going on. Like for instance, like somebody's like, well, I just never knew what was happening here. And maybe they're going, well, what would you like to see different? Well, I would like a phone call at the end of every single day, giving me a breakdown of what's actually been going on. You might, as the real estate agent, as the professional, say, well, here's how I handle it. And there's a lot of days where there's nothing to report. But what I know is that in an email once a week at the end and a phone call at the beginning of the week, which is what my process is, I can make sure that you know everything that happened here and everything that happened here. And this will also give you your chance to ask me any questions that you might have. And by the way, you have these. It is totally okay to send me an email if you have questions that are going on. I accept it. Like, you start opening doors up where they may have not felt that they had that level of communication before, even though they want something. As long as you understand what they're trying to achieve, which is having an understanding of what's going on. Oh, I have a process for that. Here's how I handle it. You don't have to change your process. You don't have to all of a sudden go like, oh, well, now to meet their expectations, I have to make a phone call at the end of every single day and be like, hey, Matt, it's Garrett. Nothing. Nothing happened. Same as yesterday. How's your day going though? Like, we don't have to do that. We don't have to like change this, but we do need to go here. Here's what you can expect from me. And then you have to show up. You set expectations. You better show up, because all of a sudden, if you don't, you're a liar. You don't want to be a liar, because then all of a sudden they can't trust anything that you have going forward of what you said you were going to do.
That's a good point. Taking a moment to understand like the expectation behind the request, or switch it around if that makes more sense, because you're right. Like, the phone call at the end of the day is a request. Like, I just need to know. All right, cool. You need some clarity. I get that. Is that what you're saying? You want to make sure that you are fully clear on what's going on every step of the way. Yeah, that's what I want. Great. Here's my process to help make sure that that happens. Is this something that will work for you? And guess what? Once you get through these clarities, if they're like, that's not going to work for me, you get a choice of like, cool, well, then maybe I'm not the realtor for you. And that's okay.
Well,
right? That
so
can
prime
be
example,
part of the solution.
When I was actively selling, I remember I used to tell people is that you're going to get a customer service call from me, every week without fail. You're going to hear from me. I also used to let them know if anything was critical, if there was an emergency, if there was anything that was coming up, that I'm not going to wait until Wednesday at that time to call you to be like, oh yeah, we had this bombshell drop like on last Friday. That totally made this deal go sideways, and I just figured this is Wednesday when I call you, so I'd let you know. Like, no, I'm going to call you immediately when all of a sudden we have a issue that needs to be taken care of right here and now. And I think that, again, setting that expectation of going like, always going to hear from me here, but if there is something that is critical, I'm not going to sit on it. You're going to hear from me immediately, because that's my job. That's my relationship with you. And just setting that all of a sudden would take somebody who really wants to know what's going on, who feels like they're in the dark, to be like, okay, Garrett set the expectation, always going to hear from him. And if it's critical, I will also hear from him outside of that time. Good. golden. It's just expectations are incredible. And I have found more often than not, when I have somebody that's sideways with a client, I can always go, did you set an expectation with them to clear that up? Or did they have an expectation that maybe you weren't fulfilling? Like, it usually comes down to something along those lines.
Well, it's interesting with something like that too, because an expectation could lead to another unspoken expectation that is negative. Like, oh, Garrett's only going to call me once a week. That's it. And because I hear that from agents when they're saying these once a week, like, but I talk to my customers all week, all the time. It's like, great, awesome. But that's not what this is. This is something different. And we go through that process of understanding it. It's like, well, I'm not going to tell them I'm only going to talk to them once a week. I'm like, that's not what we're asking you to set up.
You will always hear from me at this time on this day.
Yeah.
We might be talking all week long if that's what we need to be doing, but you will always hear from me at this day.
And, you know, the second half of this statement from Catherine is these things lead to premeditated resentment. And when you look at it that way, for me, I'm like, gosh, you're just, you know, then up front, you're setting yourself up for disaster. It's not that the resentment's coming later. Like, you totally premeditated a situation where, and we do it non-consciously. If we actually go back and think about some of these things, particularly with personal relationships, we'll say something, we'll do something because, like, I'm going to create this scenario and I know exactly what's going to happen. You know, I'm going to come home and dinner's not going to be made. And I was
driving home. I was driving home that night in the car on the way home, and my mind was going, I'm going to walk into the house. Everybody's going to be doing their own thing. Dinner's not going to be made. And I walked in, I was like, yep, exactly again, zero expectations were put on the table.
we get ourselves all pissed off about this stuff. Like, a client will say, yeah, I got to think about it. And we're like, all right, cool. Client won't call us back. Like, they're not calling me. Like, I'm so upset that they're not making these. Like, well, but you kind of knew that was going to happen because there was no expectation of a communication. It was just, they're going to think about it to eternity. Like, don't do that to yourself. And it is this weird kind of mechanism that we have built into ourselves where we like want to prove that we're right. So we create a scenario that will do that for ourselves when in fact we didn't prove anything. We just kind of made ourselves miserable.
Yeah. Well, the opportunity is here, and I want everybody thinking about this with their clients they have in front of them right now, the working relationships that we're setting up, going into a marketplace that's changing right now and setting these expectations of what these clients can expect and what they can see out here potentially. We need to start having these conversations. I'm watching this happen right now, Matt, with properties that are sitting on the market a little bit longer and the clients are getting mad, and the agents understand that the clients are getting frustrated, and we just need to start sitting here and saying, did you tell them that there's a potential? Like, we're seeing properties sit on the market a little bit. Like, if we don't hit this right, it could be here a little bit longer than you want. No, I didn't tell them that, or I didn't set that expectation. Well, it's like, okay, we need to start having some better conversations. We need to start putting more things on the table. We need to see what their expectations are. We need to get clear about this stuff. So just want to encourage all of you, ask better questions right now. Find out what their prior experiences have been. Find out how you can meet them halfway and make sure that you can, make this come together in a way that everybody is going to be happy at the end of the day, because we all know what's going on and what should be happening. So, Matt, anything else we need to add to this?
Yeah, man, I think that's great. Just watch out for those unspoken expectations inside your brain because they creep up on you.
Well, with that being said, we'd love to have you come join us at our Life at 10 Tents. We have a couple different levels of membership you can come join us with. We also have the coaching, which is the 11 Circle, which we have an amazing group of people that we do weekly coaching in there, group coaching, having so much fun with that. And then Matt and I also do personal one-on-one coaching where you can hire one of us personally to work with you and your business. And check us out on YouTube. You can see us live on there. We'll at least see our faces on there on YouTube if you want to see us there. We've got Spotify and Apple if you're listening to that there. Like, share, pass these out to your friends. If you have managing brokers that you're like, they need to hear this and they can use some of these tools in office meetings and things along those lines, share these with them. We have a lot of people that use these in a lot of different ways. So appreciate you all. Matt, appreciate you, sir. And everyone have an amazing day.
Take care, everybody.